to the courage to be courageous.
This is Dan Bolen, and I'm the host of a podcast called The Courage to be Courageous, where people come from all walks of life to share their story of how they have used courage to overcome their fear. It's so good to be back with you guys again, and we're going to talk about a very interesting subject today. Nowadays, when conversion therapy comes up, people say, "Why are you still talking about this? This was the thing of the past. The gay community should move on." Now, my good friend Isiah, who's biracial, as a teenager, went through years of conversion therapy. His story is a reminder that these struggles aren't just history, they're still very real. So, Isiah, tell us a little bit more about your particular experience.
So, I essentially had a couple of options in my head of what could happen once I had come out to my dad. At that point, I knew that I wasn't going to be allowed to come out publicly because we were just so ingratiated in the church, and in my head, it was a choice of going to hell and being gay or fixing it and not being gay. And so when my dad gave me the option of trying to work with therapists who could possibly make me not gay, that sounded like a life-saving, life-changing moment. And so I went through, I think, a series of 3 different therapists who were trained specifically in, I guess, conversion therapy, suppression of gay thoughts, something along those lines. There were different tools and techniques that were supposed to be used. A lot of it started out talking about, what happens in your childhood, how did you grow up, those sorts of things. And then it moved into how can we change your thought patterns from being about men to being about women. And so looking back now, I don't know that it was appropriate to tell someone my age to think about a naked woman instead of thinking about a naked man. I was willing to do anything to get rid of this affliction because I really did believe that it was my fault that I was that way and that I was disappointing God, and that somehow was going to be able, if I worked hard enough, to get rid of this thing. And so I did everything that was asked of me in those therapy sessions. And I was very honest and open, and I wasn't getting the results that I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be like, okay, you go to this I think I was going like every other day or every like twice a week or something like that for a year with this one particular person. And I was like, this is going to be great. It's going to be done. And there were points where I started dating girls and sort of forcing myself to make the straight thing happen. But it was all just a facade. I mean, it was all just covering up something that was definitely still there. And then I started just getting so depressed and so sad going, because I just was realizing that the more and more time I spent doing this, that it wasn't working, that it wasn't changing, that I had truly wanted to change in my heart. I was like, I will do anything to make this different. And that feeling didn't go away.
Isiah, at what point did you realize it wasn't just a phase, but was fundamentally a part of who you are?
I still had attraction to men throughout high school. And although I was not sexually active, that feeling of knowing what you're attracted to is still there. And I was in such a bad mental state where I just knew, I was like, I have to be able to experience what this is like to be able to act out on these feelings. Or I feel like I'm just going to explode and just be, depressed, or I'm not going to be here anymore.
And now the situation is getting worse, of course. And this is creating problems even today, especially for the trans community. Isiah, what's your thoughts on that?
When I look at the state of where we are in this country currently, a lot of times I hear, especially working in the political realm, I hear this narrative of, the gay agenda, or they're trying to force us to accept. No one's asking you to change your belief system. No one's asking you to marry a gay person. No one is asking you to become a transgender person. All that we're asking is that you allow us to exist without forcing your belief system into something that causes my existence to be oppressed. Historically, homosexuality has always been associated with something derogatory. We are supposed to be here to procreate and to fill the earth and to spread God's message. Assuming that the founding fathers, this was their intention, that's what their thought process is. People like the status quo. They don't want to feel like their way of life is being questioned or it's being threatened. And so by forcing people to assimilate to what they're comfortable with, they don't feel threatened. That's why people essentially do what they do. People in power want to stay in power. People with money want to keep their money. People that have been historically the winners don't want to become the losers. And so anything that's foreign to someone, they're usually uncomfortable with, at least initially. And it takes more work to get to know something that is foreign to you or that you're uncomfortable with than it does to just push that aside and not learn about it and to spew hate about it. That's easier than actually learning something new.
Donald Trump, who's our new president, has not been favorable to the LGBT community. And many of the rights we have are starting to roll back. We're not moving forward, we're moving backward under this administration. What do you think the reason is for that, Isiah? What's your thoughts on that?
The reality is in this country is that we don't often learn from our mistakes the first time. So if we are not vigilant about making sure that our history is continuously being taught to the generations to come, we keep going through the same things over and over. When people are asking, why are you guys still talking about this? Why can't you get past this? It's because the lessons have not been learned. The behaviors have not changed. So the day that there's equity, the day that there is real resolve to treat people fairly and to be kind, this is what we're going to have to keep doing. If anyone who is actually studying history looks at it, you will see almost everything that's happening in this country is something that has already happened before. You have a populist group coalition, and then they find a populist leader who tells them, you know what, this is wrong. They're taking away the way that you like to live life, and I am the only person who can come in and save the day, so you have to follow me. And then this coalition gets louder and louder and louder and keeps building, and then they're like, you know what, our government is not working for us, so we're going to overthrow what the status quo is. This is nothing new. This is what America is. America has a dirty, dirty, dirty bloodstain on it. And all we do is occasionally pour a little bit of water on it. And we're like, we're better. We're fixed. We're not. We're not doing the real work. And I think with the queer community, we have to do the real work too. We've caused damage. We have not treated everyone under that queer umbrella the same. people have been being oppressed by people in our community for a very long time. And we have to rectify that.
Isiah, looking back at your own struggles as a teenager and recognizing that the next generation may be facing similar challenges, how does your story will affect those of our listeners and give them some hope and some confidence? And how can they move forward from where they're at?
I'm grateful that I have lived the life that I've lived and been able to have access to the things that I have access to because of those who fought for me to have those rights. The people that came before me that made it possible for me to make a choice about how I wanted to live my life when those people didn't have that luxury. But I think now it's my responsibility, no matter how big or small, to use my voice, to use my platform to advocate for those who don't have that same ability to do so, whether they're in another country and it's illegal to be gay, or whether they are a different gender and their rights and access to healthcare are being taken away. I feel like that's my responsibility to make sure that I am an ally, an advocate, and a friend to people who are in those positions, because I know what it's like to be in that position from what I went through in my life. And it's a dark place.
My dear friend, I'm truly grateful that you were able to share your story today with our audience. We sincerely appreciate the gratitude by sharing the journey that you had, and especially will help the younger generation. So thank you so much for being on our podcast today. It's been my pleasure.